My son called it a retirement gift. I had worked 31 years as a structural engineer for the county, and when I finally handed in my badge last spring, he showed up at my door with a brand new laptop, still in the box. He set it on my kitchen counter like it was the most thoughtful thing anyone had ever done. He hugged me. He told me I deserved to rest. He said, "Dad, you can video call me anytime now. We don't have to keep playing phone tag." I believed him. I was 63 years old, and I believed every word. The laptop sat on my desk for 3 days before I turned it on. I am not someone who avoids technology. I spent 3 decades reading blueprints on a screen and submitting load calculations through government software. But something about that gift made me uneasy in a way I could not name. I chalked it up to retirement nerves, the strange hollowness that comes when the alarm clock stops mattering. I told myself I was overthinking it, the way men my age tend to do when they suddenly have too much quiet and not enough to fill it. On the 4th day, I opened the laptop. I set up my email, bookmarked a few news sites, and called my granddaughter over the built-in camera. She picked up on the second ring. She was sitting in her car outside the hospital where she works as a patient advocate, still in her lanyard, eating a sandwich. She laughed when she saw my face. "Grandpa, you look like you're defusing a bomb." "I might be," I told her. She walked me through a few things: how to adjust the screen brightness, how to mute notifications, simple stuff. Before she hung up, she paused and looked at the screen a little longer than usual. "Did my dad set this up for you before he gave it to you?" I said I assumed so. It had already been connected to my Wi-Fi when I turned it on, which I thought was strange, but figured he must have asked my neighbor for the password. He had borrowed it before. She didn't say anything right away. Then she said, "Okay, I'll come by Saturday. Everything all right?" "Yeah," she said. "I just want to show you something." She did not sound alarmed. She sounded careful, which is worse. Saturday came and she arrived with coffee and a canvas bag over her shoulder. She sat down at my desk, opened the laptop, and spent about 20 minutes clicking through menus I had never seen before. I stood behind her and watched. At one point, she typed something into a command window, a black screen with white text, and leaned closer to the monitor. She was quiet for a long time. "Grandpa," she finally said, "someone installed remote access software on this before you got it." I asked her what that meant. She turned around in the chair. She looked at me the way people look at you when they are choosing their words very deliberately, the way doctors do right before they say something you are not going to like. "It means someone can see everything you do on this computer," she said. "Every website, every document you open, every time you log into your bank." The room got very still. I sat down on the edge of my bed and I said, "My son gave me this laptop." She nodded. I said, "He set it up." She nodded again. I am not a man who cries easily. I have held myself together through things that would level most people. I lost my wife to cancer 11 years ago, and I kept it together for my son, for my granddaughter, for everyone around me. But sitting on the edge of that bed, looking at my granddaughter's face, I felt something shift inside my chest that I had not felt since the day the doctor used the word terminal. I said, "How long?" She said she couldn't tell exactly from the software itself, but she could help me find out. That was the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, she came by every evening after her shift. She brought her own laptop and a small external drive, and she worked methodically, the way I used to work when I was mapping out the stress points on a bridge. My granddaughter does not panic. She gets quiet and focused and thorough, and watching her work was one of the strangest combinations of pride and grief I have ever felt. What she found was not small. The remote access software was the least of it. Buried in my email in a folder I never created, hidden so I would never see it, were months of correspondence. My son had been communicating with a real estate attorney. He had been communicating with a financial advisor I had never heard of. And he had been communicating with someone at my bank, in writing, using a version of my email address that was off by one letter that automatically forwarded to his personal account. He had been watching me log into my retirement account. He had been watching me pay my bills. He had been watching me for at least 4 months before he gave me the laptop, using a method my granddaughter explained, but that I am still not sure I fully understand. What I understood was the result. He knew my balances, my passwords, and my routine. and he had been making small withdrawals from a secondary savings account. I barely checked $200 here, $300 there for the better part of a year. In total, she calculated, he had taken just over $19,000. I sat with that number for a long time. $19,000. It is not a fortune. I am not a wealthy man, but it was money I had saved carefully, dollar by dollar. Over the years I worked, and it was mine, and he had taken it like it was nothing, like I was a resource and not his father. There was more. In a folder labeled with a date from 8 months prior, my granddaughter found a scanned document. It was a power of attorney, my name at the top, my signature at the bottom. I had never signed it. I had never seen it. But there it was, and the signature looked close enough to mine that my stomach turned over when I saw it. The document named my son as my legal decision-maker in the event I was deemed unable to manage my own affairs. Attached to it was a single email, sent from his account to someone at an elder care law firm. He's been showing signs for a while now, forgetting appointments, getting confused with finances. I'm worried he can't live alone much longer. What are our next steps regarding the property? The property. My house. The house my wife and I bought together 30 years ago. The one I refinished the floors in myself. The one that still has her rose bushes along the back fence that I water because I cannot bring myself to let them die. He had been building a case. Quietly, carefully, over months. He had been positioning me as incompetent so that he could assume control of my finances and my home and eventually sell it. And I would not have had any legal ground to stand on because, on paper, he would have had the authority to make those decisions for me. I want to be honest about what I felt when I understood the full picture. There was grief. Yes, there is always grief when you realize someone you love has been lying to you. But under the grief, there was something harder. There was anger, the clean and clarifying kind. The kind that does not make you want to cry, it makes you want to act. I told my granddaughter I wanted to do this right. No confrontations, no warnings, no giving him any reason to destroy evidence or move money before I had documentation. She agreed. She said she knew someone, a woman she had worked with through the hospital, a patient advocate who had dealt with exactly this kind of financial elder abuse and knew which authorities to contact. I also called my own attorney, a man I had used for estate planning 15 years ago and had stayed in touch with over the years. A steady, careful man who listened to everything I told him without interrupting and then said, "You did the right thing coming to me first." We did not move fast. We moved deliberately. There is a difference. My granddaughter copied everything, every email, every document, every financial record she could access onto her external drive and made 3 separate backups. My attorney contacted the state's Elder Financial Abuse Unit. We filed a report with the bank. We filed a report with local law enforcement, and then, on my attorney's advice, I kept using the laptop exactly as I had been. This was the hardest part. Every time I opened it, knowing that my son was potentially watching, I had to behave as though I knew nothing. I had to log into my accounts and let him see the same balances he had been monitoring. I had to send ordinary emails. I had to appear, to anyone watching, like an old man, going about his ordinary life. My son called me twice during those 3 weeks. Both times I answered. Both times I talked to him about nothing, the weather, my neighbor's new truck, a documentary I had watched. He sounded normal. He sounded warm. He called me Dad. I will tell you that was the hardest thing I have ever done, and I have done hard things. My granddaughter came for dinner every few nights. We did not discuss the case at the table. We talked about her work, about the family she had advocated for that week, about a book she was reading. But sometimes, when she was washing her dish at the sink, she would look at me, and I would look at her. And there was an entire conversation in that silence that neither of us needed to say out loud. In the 4th week, my attorney called. The bank had confirmed unauthorized access to my secondary savings account over an 11-month period, totaling $19,420. The power of attorney document had been examined by a forensic document specialist, who determined the signature was a forgery. The elder care law firm had been contacted by investigators and had already begun cooperating. Apparently, my son had not mentioned that he did not have my consent for any of this, and the firm had been an unwitting participant. There was enough for a warrant. The morning they came to his door, I was sitting at my kitchen table with my coffee. My granddaughter had called to tell me it was happening. I did not go. I did not need to see it. I sat at the table where my wife and I used to eat breakfast, in the house my son had been trying to take from me, and I drank my coffee, and I let it happen without me. He was charged with elder financial abuse, forgery of a legal document, and unauthorized access to computer systems. 3 separate charges. His attorney moved to have the computer access charge reduced, and I am told that is still being negotiated. The forgery and the financial abuse charges are not being reduced. At the arraignment, I was present. I sat 2 rows behind the prosecutor. My son looked at me once when he was brought in. Just once. I want to be accurate about what I saw on his face because I think it matters. It was not remorse. It was calculation, the same look he had when he handed me that laptop, warm on the surface and something else entirely underneath. I looked back at him, and I did not look away until he did. At 63 years old, I am not who I was at 40. My knees are less reliable. I read with glasses now. I forget where I put things sometimes, the way everyone does when the noise in their life settles down and the small details start slipping. But I am not confused. I am not incompetent. I know exactly who I am, and I know exactly what was done to me, and I know the difference between a gift and a trap. The laptop is gone. I bought a new one myself, at a store, in cash, and I set it up with my granddaughter standing beside me. She checked everything before I turned it on. She has a way of being thorough without making you feel fragile, which is a rare quality and one I am grateful for. My house is still mine. The rose bushes along the back fence came up strong this spring, the way they do after a hard winter fuller than the year before, like they were compensating for something. I water them every morning. I am not going to tell you I have forgiven my son, because I have not, and I think it would be dishonest to pretend otherwise. What I can tell you is that I understand something now that I did not fully understand before. The people who mean to harm you are almost never strangers. They are people who know your schedule, your passwords, your habits, your vulnerabilities. They are people you let through the front door without thinking because you trusted them. That is not a reason to stop trusting people. My granddaughter is proof that trust is not the problem. Trust given to the wrong person is the problem. And the difference I know now is not always visible until you are looking for it. Look for it. I am not a man who usually asks anything of people I do not know. But if you are watching this and you have parents who are older, who live alone, who receive gifts of technology from people who stand to benefit from their finances, please check. Not because everyone is dishonest, but because the ones who are will count on you not checking. And if you are watching this and something feels off, some gift that arrived already set up, some document you do not remember signing, some account that looks slightly different than you expected, do not dismiss it. Do not tell yourself you are being paranoid. The feeling that something is wrong is almost always right. My granddaughter called me last week. She said she had been thinking about everything and she asked me if I was okay. Not fine, not managing okay. I told her the truth. I told her I was still angry, and I was still sad, and I was also still here, in my house, with my coffee and my rose bushes and a laptop I set up myself. I told her that being here still felt like something. After everything, it still felt like something worth protecting. She said, "Good. Don't let anyone take that from you." I said I did not intend to.